Happy Halloween, everyone, and welcome to a special Halloween edition of the BG Show, where I'm here to talk about one of my favorite movie franchises of all time, Halloween. I thought it'd be the perfect day to talk about not only Halloween 1, but this franchise in general, mainly Halloweens 1, 2, and 4, which are my favorites, but just everything in general. So let me just get right into it. I don't really remember when I saw this movie for the first time. But as you get older, the reason it ages so well because it kind of gets funnier and funnier, and I'll get into the comedy. But this movie was obviously super scary. I love slasher movies in general. I haven't done a ton of reviews on that. Obviously, I've been more focused on like the comic book stuff, but I got to start covering slasher movies, and this is a great place to start. So everything is perfect. Let's start with Halloween 1, the original. Definitely, I think this movie, I think it's in my top 10 movies of my, I'm not saying top 10 best movies of all time, my favorite 10 movies of all time. Certainly the franchises as a whole. But I just love everything about this movie. It's really the basis, I think, for all slasher movies. I think it's better than Friday the 13th. I think it's better than the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. People can, have their own opinions. That's perfectly fine. But I just love Michael Myers as a character, which I guess is weird to say because he's like he's like the biggest serial killer in movie history. But I just think his walk, the fact that most times he simply just uses a knife. The music, of course, John Carpenter himself, the director, made the music himself, which is amazing because it's one of the most famous movie scores of all time. And he just said, fuck it, and made it himself. And yeah, I mean, all of the classic, slasher movie tropes come from Halloween 1, right? Obviously, just having this scary killer in a mask with a knife, which led to so many more slasher movies. Scream, which is the next movie I'm going to be doing. I also love Scream. So just like the basis of that, the whole like teenagers and just young people in general just getting killed in these movies and always being in social situations really started in this movie. The whole just concept of like a small town in Haddonfield, which I really, really like. Everyone's walking to and from school. So just so many of the classic horror movie tropes came from this movie. And even just the lore about the makings of this movie, right? Like what I mentioned about the music, that John Carpenter just made the music himself, and it's so good. And even just the mask. The mask is just a William Shatner mask, which is just painted white, which I always love. That's like arguably one of my favorite movie fun facts. But, other tropes that this movie does is one of my favorite things that I think this movie started, and I just love seeing it in movies, is when they're transporting a crazy person. They're transporting him for no apparent reason. They have no reason to be doing it, but they just transport him anyway to from like one side of the hospital to the other, or they're transporting him in an ambulance, and he obviously breaks free, and you can just tell from the start of the scene that all the nurses and all the people working at the hospital are going to die. So, like I said, as I got older, there were just so many. I think you're lying to yourself if these movies don't become really funny. There's just so many funny moments. The Ben Tramer death in Halloween 2, I think, is one of the funniest scenes in movies. He just is walking across the street and just gets hit by a car and just explodes, and they just leave him there. It's not supposed to be funny, but it is. And then I'm going to get into what I should have maybe started with is Loomis. Loomis is so fucking funny. I'm sorry if people disagree, but Loomis is totally unhinged. In the first movie, he's like somewhat normal, but by Halloween 3, and especially Halloween 4, he's totally unhinged. He has no authority at all. He's just like a psychiatrist, and he's just running around with a gun, indiscriminately waving it around to people, shooting people, doing his own investigation. It's hilarious when you think about it. And so, yeah, I think Halloween, and then you get to Halloween 2, and Halloween 2 really it takes place a lot in the hospital, which I think is good, and it's just kind of funny because, yeah, I mean, hospitals can be, like, somewhat quiet at times, but there's always just no one there, which is, I always thought was really funny. This is really when Loomis just starts shooting at him with no regard for saving him. All of the Loomis tropes, he's just screaming like evil has come to your town. At these random people, and it's so funny. And then let's get to Halloween 4, which, similar to the Rocky franchise, the first one is probably the best movie, but you can argue that the fourth one is the most entertaining. And this one starts out 10 minutes into the movie, Michael has already ripped through an entire gas station, and then Loomis is right behind him, and Loomis starts shooting at him. Like, they have that good scene where they're looking at each other down like the in the kitchen, which I always thought was like, that scene always scared me. And then, but the funniest part about this is they have this slow motion action scene where Michael comes barreling out of the gas station, and Loomis starts firing at him, and he misses, and he hits the gas station, and the gas station explodes. So not only does this guy die, Loomis blows up this guy's entire business, so no one can even inherit it. And then they do this slow motion action scene. Loomis does like a barrel roll over containers, even though he's like 75 and walks with a cane. He all of a sudden just gets this adrenaline rush, and it's so funny. But yeah, I gotta find someone to do like a more in-depth review of these movies with. But I just wanted to talk about it on Halloween. I just, and then I guess let's talk about some of the newer ones. So then they made Halloween H2O, which is okay. I mean, it's just like a classic, Millennium, 1999, 2000. I think that's when it was made. 2001 horror movie. Those all had such a specific theme. I actually remember one. It actually does have a memorable scene. I forgot what it's called, but like that little elevator that's like that the butler uses, or whatever the maids use, or whatever they use it for. The dolly. I don't even know how you call it, but someone dies in there. I always remember that scene. And then they made the newer Rob Zombie movies, which are honestly like, they're probably the most realistic, but those movies are honestly like kind of gory, and just some very nasty scenes. But Michael is very scary in those movies. I think they made 2 of them. But yeah, those movies are pretty fucked up. And then they have the newer Jamie Lee Curtis movies, which I think I saw the first one. I honestly have to see these 3. I've just seen so many clips of them. So I got to get into those movies and do a review, but I don't think that they're nearly as good from what I saw as the original ones. And yeah, so that's my kind of review, or short review, of just a Halloween franchise in general. I just wanted to talk about it on Halloween. I'm going to do Scream next, so if you're a Scream fan, stay tuned for that. Thanks guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.